Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. We're going to sit back and we're going to take a look at some winter sports work with some popping fun stuff here in Media Composer using BCC Effects and some FEC Effects. I'm going to start off just so you can see we're going to do some work with a really advanced titler here called Title 3D. It's going to be really easy, fast animations. We're going to take a look at some really nice eye-popping transitions, and I'm going to show you how they work and how I use them, like a glow, a lens transition. I want to show you something really cool about handling SD and up-converting to high def. And then I want to show you something, just an Avid frustration that we're going to work around down here. No, not scopes. I want to show you how we can get other effects on existing titles. And I'm going to teach it to you in such a way that you're going to be able to download and try these out and make them work, and make them work with the least amount of work. As they've said, the questions pod there is open and available to you. You can certainly ask questions along the way. I probably won't get to them to the end unless they interrupt me. But I'm going to go ahead here and get started as I switch sequences here. And I have a totally empty sequence. Come on. Oh, wow. I have a totally empty sequence. Let's just double check. Looks like, there it is. It looks like it's all there. There it is. My screen refreshed. So I want to, as I work here, I want to make sure we give a little nod out here to Artbeats. We turned to them when we needed some dynamic footage, and particularly I needed them because I was going to work with some SD footage, and their library is so deep that they made available for me, with some licensing stuff. Just a couple really nice clips here that are all SD. I have no SD footage anymore, and I'm going to ignore that. There we go. Great. So meanwhile, to take a look at my timeline here, I'm just going to hide their logo. It's up on V15. My monitor's up there. If you've never seen this, it's really easy for you in Media Composer to hide a track. I'm a big fan anytime I teach to show you something just right out of the gate that's useful. I've got the logo way up there on V15, and if you've never seen how to do that, if you hold down the Option or Alt key when you create a new video track, you can put a track anywhere. And I almost always put a track up at, say, V15 or V20 for any graphics or bugs that I'm going to need, because I'm going to be using the Artbeats bug throughout. So let's go ahead, let's hide that track. And let's take a look at our timeline here. I'm going to, on this first clip, we're going to put a nice 3D title. But before I do, I'm going to do it on black so we can see it just by itself. Let me zoom in just to this area. You'll see I've already scored my timeline here. And I'm just going to switch my system from source record editing to a pre-built effect editing toolset. Has all my tools open. It's real nice and large and real easy for us to see what's going on. We're going to be working with the Boris 3D object, and the first one I'm going to work with is the Type-On Text. Now, I'm going to drag and drop and put that on a scored part of my timeline. It's going to give me some instructions. Before I go and launch the text window to open it, I want to just point out here that there are a couple other really fantastic 3D items, such as extruded EPS, so you could extrude logos, splines. There's some layer deformation here. The whole thing is these are all part of really nice 3D objects. And the first one I'm going to deal with is text. So I'm going to launch the text window. I'm going to type in something like Winter Wonderland. Yeah, you've seen a text window. You've seen probably 100 text windows in your life, or 1,000 text windows. What I think is a little bit more important about the text window itself are some of the things that make it a little bit faster and easier for me as a user. So with this selected, sure, I can check any font I want. We've seen all this. A nice little feature are these two little buttons that let me step up or step down through the fonts quickly. And I don't need to tell you about bold or italicizing. The same thing with the font size. I can make the fonts larger and smaller quickly, or I can type directly. Things that you would expect. One thing that you may not be aware of that I think is very important for us as professionals is to know how to do pair kerning. Tracking is the space in between all the words, but kerning is the space in between letters. And while you could click in between a pair of letters and adjust the kerning manually, I'm a big fan of using the Option or Alt key and using my left and right arrows to narrow and expand the space in between a pair of letters. Great trick. Every time I've ever worked with a art director, they've always been upset because until I learned what I'm going to teach you, which is a trick about how to get your pair kerning right, you should look at 3 letters and look at the gaps between 2 of them to get the feel of their space. So I feel the space between the I and the N doesn't match the N and the T. So I'm just going to option left arrow and narrow that space up a little bit. All right, now I'm going to hit apply. We're going to come back to this window a second. The only negative is that you can't actually see this directly on the screen while it's happening, but I'm going to show you a neat trick. If you're familiar with this window, you might be familiar with it even from Final Cut 7. I'm going to hit apply. It's large in the screen. It's really gorgeous. It's actual 3D extruded text. But I want to make a change here. I'm going to go back. I want it to be smaller than the window, and I don't know in between. Take a look here on the left. These little tabs. See the second one? It's a paragraph. I'm going to click and change the text to word wrap. Now this automatically wraps my words to match title action safe. And you can see my text is way too big. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to make it smaller until it all wraps inside. Right about there. I'm centered. I'm going to say OK. And now we have Winter Wonderland showing up beautifully on screen. So you can see it's really easy for me to create text. And this text is fairly nuanced. This is true 3D. It's got materials, it's got a camera, it's got lights. One of the nice features of all the BCC effects, but particularly this one, is it doesn't give you too many controls if you don't need them. It turns on and off controls. So for example, at the bottom you'll see I only have 1 light. I'll turn on light 2. You'll see underneath here I get controls for light 2, and you can see my text got a lot brighter. Big concept here is if you're a novice to 3D, it's really easy for you to figure out what's going on and how to make adjustments. Right now my material is sort of a steel-like. As you see, it says front material here. I'm going to roll this open and I'm going to change it to a different preset. For example, I might take something like heat or shiny. And you can see the text change to match this. All of the different choices here, all the different choices here, let's try that again. And we'll take something like cave wall. All the different choices here are applying to all the faces of the text. And I'm just going to roll open for a moment the transformations. I'm just going to roll open here my transformations. I'm going to go ahead and roll that open, and let's do a rotate Y. So you can see the edges of the text, and it's got some real 3D to it. It has depth, it has a bevel edge, has a back face. You don't need to know all of that stuff about 3D. They're different materials, and thankfully BCC's Type-On Text has made this a lot easier for me than a lot of 3D software by giving me one material for all 4 faces and telling me exactly how many or how few I want. If I wanted to do a different material on all 4, I would choose 4, and it would give me all 4 materials. So you have this huge amount of customization. I'm going to make it back to 1 on all sides. Presets are big across this tool. I've got some really nice pre-built presets. I'll pick, for example, some of these have got on and off animation. I'll choose something like slide on. And let's just scrub through this and you'll see my text come sliding on. We're not seeing that slide terribly well because it's coming from the bottom left of the screen. Tell you what, let me teach you how to animate without any keyframes here with Type-On Text. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reset this back to factory default. We have our text there. I want to do an animation in. And if I scan down this effect, you can see here that there's a choice called Do Reveal Effect and Do Remove Effect. And that's exactly what I'm going to choose, Do Reveal Effect. It's going to open up a whole bunch of controls. There they are, Type-On Reveal. I'm going to roll open my Type-On Reveal, and let's just take a quick examining of it. Could we set keyframes? Yeah, we don't have to. The way this Type-On Reveal works is over half the length of the time, it's going to reveal the text based on whatever offsets. Right now, there are no offsets, so what we're going to end up having is we're going to end up we're going to have to adjust one of them so we can see what that offset will do for us. For example, I might take the scale up. The master scale, I'm just going to go ahead and push it way high, and all the text gets large, and you'll notice as I scrub across, the text goes falling inwards. And that's nice, but you know what, the text's gigantic, it's not going to work great for us. We probably want to adjust the fade. And now the text will fade in as it types across the screen. And again, I'm just scrolling across here, and you can see the text fall onto the screen. Really quick animation, still 0 keyframes. Let's make it do a little bit more. I'll leave it right like that. And I'm just going to rotate Y. That's like a fireman going around a fire pole. I'm just going to go ahead and spin that a little bit. You can see that end spinning. And something like that is nice. And we can now see the text come flying in and rotating. All right. Pretty happy with that. It's just happening one letter at a time, and we can make that even more dynamic. Just working my way down the top. We've seen the reveal time is over 50% of the effect. You've seen I've adjusted the master scale. I've adjusted the fade. So it's fading up from 0, fading down from 400%, and unrotating from 289. Let's add one more item to it, an overlap. With an overlap of about 500, it'll go about 5 characters. And now 5 characters are coming on all at once. This is really getting to be an attractive effect for me. I would actually use this as like an open, and we should save this. So let's do that. I'm going to come up here to the preset at the top, the same preset you saw me use earlier for the push on, the on-off push on. I'm just going to save this. I'm going to use my initials, and I'll use something like winter, fall, tumble. I'm going to choose save, and we're going to use this now with some nice background. So let's scroll down our timeline just a little bit. I've already pre-scored my timeline. I'm going to go ahead and put another Type-On Text here. And yeah, I totally could have saved the one I had into a bin, but in this case what I want to do is I want to just show you that I can recall presets. I'm going to choose launch my text window. I'm going to write something like, I wish I was going to the Olympics. I'm going to go down to that wrap and just tell it to wrap the text so I can see exactly how it's going to fall across action, title, safe. I'm going to hit apply. It shows up on screen. We can see it appearing on top of my background. I'm going to recall my preset here. I'm going to go to no preset. I'm going to choose load. Now, you can see here it's got a couple of them preloaded that I created with my initials. So it turns out that it's just an idiosyncratic part of Media Composer that these sort of things can't automatically get loaded until you launch the software the next time. So the next time I launch it, my preset will be here, but I'll load it manually. There it is, the winter, fall, tumble. I'm going to say choose, and you can see now that my text is falling in exactly the way I designed it. And I can do it over and over again with that sort of preset. It took me less than 5 minutes to actually animate that. Just really fast for such a complex animation system. I still believe that it's important to know how to do some basic keyframing stuff. So right here near the end, I want to just fade this down. So I'm going to add a keyframe, hitting my keyframe button on my Media Composer. I'm going to go to the last frame. I want to roll open a general control. Something really powerful and kind of unique about the BCC effects is you can actually turn on and off the BCC effects themselves. Meaning that instead of it just being, you have to pardon me 1 second, I got to make one silly adjustment on my system here. It should take me about 2 seconds. It has been made. The silly little thing I want to show you is that this idea that you can fade an effect becomes really useful. Imagine if you had a blur and you want to just pull back some of the blur, you can just fade out that layer, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to add a keyframe, and I'm just going to pull back the opacity of this text. Sure, I could have used the reveal, the do the remove effect, but I chose to just have the text fade down. I could have used the dissolve, but I did it all inside of a single effect. I'm really happy with that. And so as I scrub that back in my timeline, you can see my text now spins in, and then it fades off at the end. And I cut from this really nice, snowy, sports footage background as I cut here. I want a little bit more from this shot. I want it to have just a little bit more of a push to it. And so I'm going to go grab a glow. There are these gorgeous BCC film style items. We're going to see a little bit later. I'll touch on the film process. But at the moment, I'm going to go ahead here and grab the Film Glow and add it to this because I want to teach you how to decode a lot of the BCC effects. This is a really neat trick here that a lot of people kind of run into problems with when they see some of these tools. And I don't mean from Boris, I mean from a lot of the other companies out there. There's just a lot of knobs to twirl. So let's take a look here at the BCC Film Glow. I want to point out just exactly how easy this is. The first sets of controls are the ones you're going to want to touch. And if something is closed, you probably, at least out of the beginning, you can ignore it. So I'll take my glow intensity and I'll just bring it up a little bit, and you can see that glow becomes really intense or really slight. It's got a lot of power and the ability for it to adjust its glow. Anytime that you see an effect and you see the word threshold, threshold means above this value, apply this effect. In this case, the threshold goes from 0 to 100, 0 being how much of this threshold color black. Anything brighter than black should get the glow. Everything's getting the glow. As I take the threshold and I pull it to the right, you'll see only the brightest areas are getting the glow. So not the whole effect. Let me just toggle that on and off. There's this really nice button up here called bypass. I'm just going to turn it on, turn it off. And you can see how that glow is coming in. Maybe I now will make that glow a little bit more intense. So you can see it really showing off. That's only glowing the brightest portions of this. There we go. That's nice. You should also note up here that you've got this great UI where you can highlight and grab these controls. And these are only the most important, the most useful controls on the tool, rather than you having to grab every single control to figure out what's important. I want to adjust this a little bit further. Let's reset this. I'm just going to go up and say reset to factory defaults. I'm going to do something really insanely cool with this glow. What I'm going to end up doing is animating it to the beat of music. But before I animate it to the beat of music, I just want to show you a couple other just good basic things to know about these effects. I'm going to go ahead here, scroll down to the bottom. You're going to see 3 items down here at the bottom that are powerful. I don't think I need to teach you drop shadow, but I do want to show you geometrics. If you are like me and you add 1, 2, or 3 or more effects to a clip, especially at the beginning of a promo, especially at the beginning of a sports piece that's really heavily music-driven and action-driven, one of the things that I'm really going to find valuable is I'm going to end up putting a 3D warp on stuff on top of a second effect. One of the beauties here, the BCC Effects, is you don't need to grab a 3D warp. You have these geometrics in a whole bunch of the BCC effects. And you can see I can just take the scale down of that. Let's just pull that down. So it's like I get a free 3D warp, a free ability to rotate and move this clip, along with reset buttons here. So it just becomes this really valuable addition that you should know when you grab an effect, that you get a bonus 3D warp, so you're not actually having to work with 2 effects if you don't want it. I'm going to go ahead and reset this. It's something that's great for you to explore later. The other ones that I want you to take a look at is the pixel chooser. I've shown you that I can use the threshold to choose which pixels for this film glow. Another item that would be also really valuable aside from that is to be able to go ahead here and use the pixel chooser to say, could you take only the, say, inside of a square or inside of a rectangle or the outside of a rectangle? And with the pixel chooser off, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on. You'll see a whole bunch of pixel chooser controls where we can do this based on matte, based on a channel such as the alpha channel or say the green channel, or we could do this based on a region. And I particularly want to take a look at a specific region here. Let's say inside of an oval. And you can see how these screen highlights, you can see my oval, you can see the square that my oval is going to exist inside of. And you can see how I can adjust it directly on screen to say, oh, I only want it to be on the, say, this left half of the screen. And let's just take the region blend and pull it way, way, way wide. It becomes a really subtle glow on the right side of the screen. This sort of ability that the Boris effects have, a whole bunch of them have the pixel chooser, allowing you to choose which pixels you want to see on screen to get the effect rather than the entire screen. If you've ever built this in an Avid, you need like 3, 4 tracks to play these sort of games. And the beauty of BCC is it's really well thought out. Just because I anticipate somebody asking, you can draw your own custom shape down here by choosing the word custom. And the big warning you need to have is to select the custom UI spline. It's the second from the top. I'm going to click here. And as I click and drag, you can see I'm dragging out a shape. And I'll close the shape. It's a little offset at the moment just because of the way I was manipulating it earlier. Let me just see if I can adjust it back down quickly. There it is. It's up towards the top. Let's just grab this whole shape and we'll move it. The beauty is, of course, you can draw directly on the screen and manipulate based on that drawing. Will that move it? Nope, it's not. I'm going to reset all this anyway. shows you what happens when you go to teach it rather than just use it. I'm going to reset it. We got that film glow. I'm going to pull up the threshold so it's only the brightest items. And now I have this little thing I want to do. I've got this real nice driving piece of music at the beginning, and I want to use that music to trigger the way this glow works. So one of the things I find is whenever I, particularly at the beginning of a promo or a spot, I like everything moving if possible. And the more I can have moving based on, say, a piece of music, really shows that I have ownership of the way my tools work. To give you an idea of what this sound sounds like here, I'm just going to back that up. I'm going to hit play. It's got a real nice little beat, and it would be nice if we could make it pulse with that beat. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get back into my effect mode. I've shown you the only adjustment I've really made on this so far is I've adjusted the glow threshold. I want to go to one of those items that it's closed. It's called the beat reactor. It's on so many of the effects, the beat reactor. I just need to enable it, and we'll get this super cool bar graph after we tell it what sound to pay attention to. Unfortunately, it can't pay attention to audio and media composer. We kind of have to fool it a little bit, and the way we fool it is we take this piece of music, we export it out of the Avid, and we leave it on our hard drive, and then we say, okay, that's the file we want to use for the music. I'm going to choose external file. I'm going to go grab that piece of music. The moment I do, something really cool is going to happen. You're seeing this rainbow bar graph that represents the way the music beats. Let me go ahead and play that and show that to you. Just back that up and so what we want to do is we want to tell this glow to vary based on specifically that music. You'll notice here right under the word beat reactor, that's what I ended up turning on. The beat reactor it says unused. I'm going to tell it what to hook up to. I'd like to hook it up to maybe the glow threshold or the glow intensity. I'll say the glow intensity here. We'll see. Oh yeah, that's really gorgeous. Let's back that up. Let me hit play when we do this so we can see what that's going to seem like. It's nice, but I think it's doing just a little much. It's working across the entire sound spectrum. It would probably be a little bit more powerful if I could tell it to just use part of the spectrum. And it's doing that here through what's called the audio graph options. I'm just going to roll that open a moment. In this audio graph, there's a top left and top right corner. I could turn these open, but I just want you to see. We're going here in red from the basses, through the midtones in green, all the way up to in purple, the higher sounds. I'm just going to grab the sample corner and pick it up here. That's the same as me going in and changing the graph top left corner. I'm going to grab the bottom right corner of it. And this is what's going to drive. It's only going to pay attention to this part of the audio spectrum, meaning that my sound, I can go ahead and I can have it pay attention to different parts of the spectrum for this animation. Let me back that up. And so that glow isn't going to be in some ways it's more intense, but it's going to be much more driven by the bass drum of the beat, which is often the way I would like this sort of animation to happen, with that driving beat that we like when we hear music play. So, I'll back that up. Before I play it back, I probably want to get rid of that bar graph. And to do that, at the top where it says beat reactor, I'm just going to open this up and say, hey, could you no longer show the graph? So let's turn off that graph. Let's back this up. Let's hit play. And again, it took me just seconds to build an animation without setting a keyframe, just understanding the way the Boris effects work. And just these BCCs alone, the beat reactor is one of my very favorite go-to items. Again, I just want to mention to you the idea you work top down. Everything has got help attached to it. I'm going to go ahead here. I'm going to bring help for the Film Glow. I'm just launch the help file. It comes up as a PDF through Apple's preview. Here's all the information about the glow. You'll see these sort of help files across the tools for when you need to get into the refined nuances. So I'm really happy with that. Let's see. Let's do a little bit of a transition. I now have here this, you know, really nice text opening. I've got this cut here, and I'm going to have this cool glow. I really would like to do something to make it, well, a good transition. And for these, I want to pay attention to our Boris transitions category. Particularly, I'm going to take a look at here the Boris transition called lens transition. So if you're like me, and I'm assuming a lot of us as filmmakers, as editors are, you really live off of two different types of transitions. Transition number one you live off of is, of course, the dissolve. And I like my dissolve, with the only caveat about dissolves. Look, you know, I end up overusing them by the end of the day. It becomes my go-to item because my other transition is a cut. Yeah, that's the joke. I only really use cuts and dissolves. When I'm working on promos, I do want to, when I work on something that's got a driving beat, a sports sort of thing like this, I want it to have something that's more than a dissolve that doesn't really call attention to itself. I'm going to use this lens transition, and while there's some great ones in here, several of which we're going to look at, I'll be honest, I personally don't use a multi-stretch wipe or a multi-stripe wipe, but a lens transition, man, this looks like a lens. I'm going to drag and drop that to put that on the effect. I'm going to get into effect mode. I want to make one adjustment to it. It's currently ending on the transition. It's a little, I'm sorry, centered on the transition. It's a little long. 20 frames is a little bit better. I'd like it to instead here, I'm going to just go to the transition effect alignment. I'm going to say ending at cut. And so as this goes by, let's scrub through this. We're on our original shot, the shot we started with. And as we go from this starting part of it, and as we scrub through, it really is going to look like a lens transition, like a blurry real lens to get to my driving beat. And the reason that I had it end on the cut was because the driving beat doesn't really happen until the shot shows up, because it's animated. And since the music starts at that point, that's why I had it end at the cut like that. If you don't know, there's a real cool way in Media Composer that you can now manipulate this directly, but I want to rather focus on my transition. I'm pretty happy with this. This is neat. If you're into cameras and lenses, there's a lot of depth here. I just want to show you one example of the depth. I can actually view and change this iris shape. So the specular highlights change. If you've ever done a transition of a dark shot with bright lights and you get those brilliant bokeh effects, you're able to use this to change the way it looks so it actually looks like a lens. I'm going to turn off that view iris switch, and I'm going to point out again, tons of presets here for you to use. Okay, so I want to get into the meat and potatoes of my timeline here. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. And wow, I already have a lot of stuff there, so let's just remove all that stuff. Let me just take a second and remove all of my effects here. So in effect mode, I'm going to go ahead and lasso all of this and delete those effects. I'm going to get rid of this, because we're going to see a real interesting sort of thing go on. Yeah, I think all the other ones are good. These are all standard F clips. Artbeats was fantastic when I turned to them, and when Boris turned to them and said, you know, we're looking for some dynamic footage. I asked them for something that I encounter all the time, which is standard def footage. And they kind of laughed at me. They said, thankfully, our library is huge. We have some standard def. But more and more, we don't deal with standard def footage anymore. And one of the reasons we don't deal with it is because we're shooting, of course, everything in high def. I work at a lot of places that still have a library of standard def footage, that still have footage that's valuable. And Avid does an okay job. I'm going to go ahead here, and I just want to zoom into this little section. I'm going to have the same clip here twice. This clip is a skier coming down the cliff, coming over this snow ridge. And it's a standard def shot. Just so we can see, and I want to make sure we're at full quality for this. This is a standard def shot, and as I jump to the next shot here, I'd like you to see that's the actual pixel for pixel representation. I'm going to use a Boris effect on this for an up conversion. It's going to be found in my image restoration category. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. I'm going to show you exactly how I import this shot to get the best quality out of the Avid. But just so we can compare here, here I have my Avid AMA imported item versus the one I imported actually with special settings, so it didn't resize the shot. So let's talk about UpRez. If you're dealing with standard def, and I still work in places where if they're not dealing with it, they go, oh wow, we have nothing. And for something like this, this might be last year's footage, this might be 5 years ago, and it might be the only shot of the snowboarder. We might want to go back and actually use it. I'm coming to the BCC Image Restoration category for it. I love this category. There's a bunch of elements here that are just magical. One that's magical is the Flickr Fixer. If you've ever been bit by an auto iris bug, that's where you have some shooter who's left his camera on auto iris, Flickr Fixer will fix the brightness changes for you. It works. It's saved my behind a half a dozen times in the last 5 years. Noise reduction is another phenomenal filter here. It just takes a lot of the noise, especially of your low light DSLR or iPhone or camera phone footage. There's a bunch of other ones here that I do use, but I want to focus on UpRez. I just want to get it set up right for this shot. So I'm going to take UpRez, I'm going to throw it on the shot. It's already blown it up. We want to do a couple adjustments to that. The big adjustment I want to do before we do any comparisons is I just want to tell it that it comes from a square pixel start. And to match the Avid, I want to change a transformation. Now, Avid's flex frame is really powerful. Not everybody has Media Composer 7. These plugins work with Media Composer 6. I want to use here the fit frame crop, which will blow it up so it takes up as much space as possible on the screen. And let's just do a quick comparison, and then we'll make some magic happen. So the quick comparison I want to do is this. I just want to jump back and forth here between this first frame and the first frame of Media Composer. They're both okay. Media Composer one, I'm on the Avid one, BCC, Avid, BCC. It's such a subtle change that's difficult to see, but we're going to make that change really electric, and I'm going to do that by getting back into effect modes. Almost magical. I'm going to change the quality here. It's currently using a very fast method of upscaling, which is fine. Media Composer has some good math behind it, but it's really meant to be fast math. This is a little bit better, and you'll see I'm going to choose Magic Sharp. Now, as I choose Magic Sharp, I want to point out the idea that Magic Sharp doesn't say a type of equation. All the time I run into a tool, I run into an effect, and they'll say like quadratic B-spline, which means nothing to me as an editor. But when I see something like Magic Smooth or Magic Sharp, to me, the editor, Magic Sharp at least tells me it's going to magically upscale the footage and it's going to be nice and sharp. And we can dial in that sharpness. And I'm going to show you, we're going to get a really gorgeous looking upscale here. So I'm going to switch to Magic Sharp. I'm going to take that sharpness on Magic Sharp here, the quality all the way up. And we're going to compare now this Magic Sharp, and I'm going to show you where I would like you to look so you can see that difference. I'd like you to right now pay attention to the ski, sorry, not the ski, his hand, and the little particles of snow and the stripe. I'm currently on the BCC UpRez with Magic Sharp on, and I'm going to take a step back, and there's the Avid one. It's good, but it's a little soft. Let's look at that forward. There's Magic Sharp on. Let's look back, the original Avid. And as I compare the Boris to the Avid one, you'll see that Magic Sharp is just really magical in the quality. Let's look at one other spot. Look down here in the bottom left. You can see that I've got some snow. You can see some of the detail in that snow. And when I step back and I look at the Avid one, it's really soft, standard def. And this doesn't call a huge amount of attention that I've upscaled it. Is this as perfect as shooting it in high def? No. But this is as good as you're going to get short of like a Terranex or a Snell and Wilcox for really gorgeous upscaling. And because I have all this set right, I'm going to go ahead and save it for myself so I can apply it to a bunch of clips here. So let's grab that. I'm going to take this UpRez. I'm going to drag it into a bin, and I'm going to call this Winter Sports UpRez Magic Sharp. I'll even say 100 just so I know the Magic Sharp number. And I'm going to come back and we're going to look at my entire timeline. I'm going to zoom in on that range of shots. They're all my standard def shots. Neat Avid trick you're about to learn, kind of an extra bonus. I'm going to grab my segment mode. I'm going to select with the Shift key all my clips. I've colored them yellow, all of my standard def clips, and I'm just going to double click. And they've just all become high-def clips with magic sharp set to them. So I'm able to repurpose and reuse these standard def clips because, well, right now, if you're up in the Portland area, there's a really bad drought, Portland, Oregon, California area, and you don't have snow on your mountains. And this was footage from a bunch of years ago. You know, thanks to Artbeats, they were really surprised when I asked if we could use at all, if there was anything I could purchase from them to use for standard def footage. And they said, yep. We've got some gorgeous stuff, and it upscales beautifully here thanks to the BCC UpRez. All right, now that I got the BCC UpRez on those shots, I want to go ahead and finish out this as a montage with something that's a little bit more electric than just our standard dissolve. And I will say, of course, I wouldn't use a different transition every time. I'd probably stick to only one or two. But I'm going to go back to my BCC, my Boris transitions here. In my transition category, I'm going to grab another favorite of mine. It's the Swish Pan. I love to do this in camera. I love it even more if it's available to me as an effect. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to change this from 1 second to 20 frames. Let's just scrub through it so we can see that Swish Pan. We start here. Swishes over. It's really nice to start with. I want to just adjust it a little bit more than this. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and let's make a change here. Let's instead of it being pan left, let's make it pan bottom. So it's going to push downwards as if we did a wild tilt up. And I want to refine it just a little bit more. And I've been going through so far and showing you how you can animate with almost no keyframes, with no animation. And I want to do that again. I want to tune this animation, and if you get something that says animation automatic, you will almost always have something that says something like tuning. I'm going to roll open my tuning, and I want to show you the ease in, ease out curve. This is a linear move right now. Every frame, the Swish Pan moves the same amount. I can adjust the ease in, how much curvature this has, and the ease out, how much it finishes with. And the general rule that I tell people when I teach ease in and ease out curves is linear, where this started. Let me just put it back to where it started. Linear, where it started, this is how a clock moves. Every single frame, it's just advancing it at the same amount. But when we put an ease in and ease out curve, it's more the way organic, natural things move, that the bird slowly leaves the nest and then goes really fast, and then slowly it goes really fast to the ground, and then it slowly lands on the ground. It eases out of its initial position, it eases into its final position. I'm going to turn off this view ease curve, and we now have this just a little bit more refined, this Swish Pan. It looks a lot more like it was done really in camera. Another one that I happen to love is a textured wipe. I'm going to take the textured wipe, I'm going to add it to the next clip. I'm going to once again dial it back to 20 frames. And the thing I want you to see about this effect is it's a wipe that's going to occur from the first shot, this mountain with a bright foreground and a dark sky, to this shot. And it's going to do it based on the texture of the shot. Because I've got this real bright, this is what made me think of using the textured wipe. It's going to fade the mountain, the bright areas first, and then it's going to do the dark area, the sky, last. It's a really cool looking effect when I've got a shot that's got this huge contrast to it. I want to do just one or two things to it, so I'm working my way down the effect. I'm looking for adjustment. Hey, there's some softness. Let's see, let's park a little bit into the effect. Let's see what that softness does for us. There we go. It's making it so the edges of it aren't harsh. I do want them to be a little harsh, not tremendously. Let's try like a number like 20. That's not bad. Let's scrub through that and let's see how it goes. Yeah, I like that a lot. You know, the only other thing I might want to do is I might want to change the way this works. It's doing it based on the luminance. So I'm looking on my way down. I don't want to do anything with borders here. Influence on. Ooh, I like that. Influence on, intensity, influence, layer, and channel. Channel, of course, refers to things like luminance, alpha, difference, red, green, blue. I'm going to invert the luma. So instead of the ground being the first thing to change, it's now going to be the sky. And as I scrub through this, we'll see that the sky changes for me first, and I still keep my snow, I still keep my mountains, and then we're going to slowly get rid of the mountains to our skier. It's a really nice, subtle transition that's not just your straight dissolve. It's one of the things that make it really nice. The BCC effects really fantastic, and I would probably even go in and tune the animation a little bit more. You know, I've done a lot here with the BCC effects. I want to go ahead and just do a couple of the FEC effects. Right here I've got the FEC, the Final Effects Complete Transitions. And the transition I want to look at here, you know, aside from a lens dissolve, the other one that I'll use is a blur dissolve. I just want to take a quick look through this category, though. These FEC effects have got a lot more transitions to them, and I actually find myself relying on them a little bit more because they're a little bit more subtle, I feel, in some ways. And I've had people ask over the years, you know, what's the difference for me between the FEC and the BCC? For me, the BCC effects are, without any question, a Swiss Army knife. If you said between the two, which would I pick? Because I only, you know, I'm going to pick up one. It's the Boris Continuum Complete. But the FEC effects have got these really gorgeous particle systems. I've got really gorgeous glows. They solve a lot of other issues, including some stuff here with some other transitions. I'm going to go ahead and throw this on. And I'm going to once again change that from 1 second down to, say, 20 frames as a dissolve. And as I scrub through this is going to look like a blur dissolve. I scrub through, it starts in one shot, it blurs, it's the second. Can you do this on Media Composer without? Yeah, but it takes a couple layers and it really requires you to understand the way Avid works. I'm going to once again take that animation timing and just give it some ease in and ease out push, because I almost would never do it linear. This will feel like a blur dissolve. This will give it a real nice kick to this shot. As I scrub this through, as we play this through, we're seeing that it's blurring in the middle of its dissolve, something that's probably the least loud addition to a dissolve you can do. I'd like to look at one more of these BCC ones, sorry, the FEC ones. And the one I want to look at here is a difference wipe. You saw before the gradient wipe, which is based on the gradient. Well, the difference wipe, let's see if I can find it easy. Second one from the top, I'm going to drag and drop it. It's going to work really great on this shot. Let me exit effect mode just so we can compare these two shots. This is it could have definitely better luminance from 0 to 100 or 0 to 255. It's definitely a little duller than it should be, this shot. We'll fix that at the end. The second shot, again, a little darker than it could be. You're shooting out in snow. You got to filter, you got to stop down that camera pretty much. But these shots are about the same brightness. And that's where a difference transition can really be valuable, because what it'll do is it will fade the things that are different last. So as I scrub through this, as I play through this, you can see that it's taking out the snow in the background first, because the snow is really similar between the two shots. And it's going to take my snow border last out from the two shots. So as I look at that again, you can see we're going here from my first snow border, the white background, which is really similar in both shots, disappears, and he disappears last. I really like this quite a bit because of this sort of images that are really similar. It makes the differences disappear. I want to take it down to 20 frames just because I think that's a little cleaner, and I want to do one more here. I want to do a glow dissolve, because it's, you know, how I do my loud staccato effect nowadays is a glow dissolve really gives it a pop in the middle of its dissolve. And I'll change this down to about 20 frames again. And as we scrub through this, you'll see it's really glowing with a loud pop in the center. I mentioned the presets. I'm just going to park here in the middle. Up here we've got no preset. We can, anytime we want, reset to factory defaults, but I can just say, and way too trippy. Nope, that's too trippy. Next preset, next preset, next preset, next preset. Every time I click the next preset button, it shows me another one for me to play with and see what it looks like. I'm going to return it back to its defaults. The whole idea here is that it becomes really quick and easy for you to try a bunch of different transitions that are all pre-built, and there's some gorgeous ones that I would use in what I would almost call traditional places, because they're a nice alternative to a dissolve. All right, I'm done with my transitions. Let's zoom back. Let's see my entire timeline again here a second. I want to talk about this back section. I want to talk about something that everybody who uses Media Composer day in, day out really has that fun struggle with. I'm just going to zoom in here to the back of the timeline. If I have a logo, if I have text, by the way, that's my name, my email address. You can come check out my website if you want. All this information. The problem about putting an effect on this effect is, of course, Media Composer affects the foreground and background. I'm going to start with this art beat shot right here. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to throw a traditional effect on it. I'll just take any of the BCC effects for this. Let me take a standard glow here a second. And let's take it. No, let's not, yeah, let's do a glow. Glow is perfect. No, I'll do a blur. Take a Gaussian blur, I drag and drop with my option key down. And when I get into effect mode, wonderful. I can go ahead and I'm blurring my title. Oh no, I'm blurring the background as well. And that just has to do with Avid's compositing model. There's nothing you can do about that. Oh, well, there is. If you have the BCC effects and this, or the FEC effects, many of them have a magic switch, and I'm going to show you that magic switch. That magic switch is right here. It's called Title Matte. So this is a Gaussian blur. I'm just going to blur this horizontally a little bit. I'm going to roll open the title map and throw my magic switch. And now we're only, oh, wait, no, I made a mistake. Let me undo. Let me get the Gaussian blur off. I made a mistake. There we go. Matte key. Here's the magic trick. Don't hold down the Option Alt key. When you add a BCC effect to a title or a matte, make sure you do not hold down that key. And you go, Jeff, it destroyed my title. It blew it away. And I'll say, yep, it totally did. And you roll open the Add to Apply to Title Matte, and it rebuilds it and allows you to do something like blur just the title. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing if you're a Media Composer user, because it's something you've been struggling with for years. I'm going to go here to the BCC particles. I'm going to take Snow. These are some great particle effects. We're going to see the 2D particles in a second. I'm going to take the Snow, no Option key down. I'm just going to destroy. I'm going to remove the Gaussian, the BCC blur. I'm going to make it a Snow. I'm going to choose, once again, roll open Title Matte, say Apply to Title Matte. And we definitely see snow. It's a winter wonderland. We definitely see snow. I'm going to have a lot more snow show up. The snow definitely moves. It's gorgeous. You know what it's not doing? It's not interacting with that text, with that Art Beats logo. Well, let's just scan down the effect with me for a second. If you scan down the effect, you see our snow amount, snow angle. We see this pan left and right, snowflakes, system, chaos. I'm not going to open up snowflakes, but I bet you can adjust the way the snowflakes look. I'm not going to adjust the system or the chaos, but I bet you chaos talks about how chaotic the environment is. But look at that last one there called interaction. I'm going to open that up. And the interaction says here, stick to layer none. And I'm going to say, oh, stick to my filter. Look, it's now got snow on the Art Beats text. And yeah, it accumulates and gets heavier over time. You don't have to figure that out. I wanted you to see exactly how straightforward that is, but to make it just a little bit more beautiful, there's a preset here. And I want to point out the idea that in the BCC effects, if something was already preset for a title, they've put the word title in the front of it. So I'll choose title, snow on title, and we get this huge amount of snow accumulating on our Art Beats logo. This looks great, but it's not as believable as could be. I'm going to tell it to, under the interaction, which I still have open, I'll have it fall through some of the, you can see now some of the snow's falling through, and we can play with that to our heart's desire. What doesn't make this really look real, though, is there should be some snow between us and the Art Beats logo. I'm going to pick a different snow filter for that, but I'm essentially building a layer. So I'm just going to scroll down to my FEC particles, because again, I find that these particle systems, it's not the ones in BCC aren't excellent. These are just really dedicated, strong particle systems. I'm going to take the FEC Snow, not the MT for the motion tracker, but the green real-time FEC Snow. I've already scored the timeline. I'm just going to throw it up higher than that. We now are going to have snow between us. We need to see a little bit more snow, so I'm going to just increase the amount. There you go. We can see now there's some snow in here. I'm going to change the flake size. I want the snow to be a lot larger. And then there's this word perspective. It's about 30 units in front of me. It's in focus. I want to pull that perspective back, 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 back. And now it's like it's on the camera. Can you see here this like little particle that looks like it's stuck almost to my lens? I'm just going to bypass and turn off the snow and turn it back on. And now this looks way more believable as a snow scene as it snows on the Art Beats logo, that it really has got some, you know, gorgeous interaction for my titles. I'm real happy with all that. Let's do just one or two other of these. I'm going to go to this next shot, talk about another thing that can be really frustrating in Media Composer. I'm going to do this back up with the BCC blend, key and blend. There's a great chroma key here. There's, if you know anything about chroma keying, Light Wrap is available for you. A different webinar I did for Boris, I think it was like last year, I showed you how to build a really gorgeous keying stack so you know your keys truly match. You have to dig that up in some of the Boris webinar archives, but I want to look at here particularly under key and blend, the composite. If you're a user of, say, Photoshop, you know what a composite mode is, you know what a blend mode is, and we all know Media Composer doesn't have it. While tons of the BCC and the FEC effects have the composite modes, they have it like they do the pixel chooser or the geometrics. I just wanted you to see that I can take this composite, throw it on the shot, jump into effect mode, say, oh, this is a title, so I'm going to turn on my title matte, and look at that gorgeousness. I'm using hard light. Oh, my favorite personally, by the way, is overlay. If you don't know which one out of apply modes or blend modes to pick, the one you should pick is overlay. And look how gorgeous it is as I can see through that text, and it overlays, it blends with that background, something that you just miss in Media Composer if you're used to tools like Photoshop. It's one of those things that's just not there, and it really can make your life easier. I want to show you two more. Over here on this Boris effect, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use another particle, a BCC particle. I'm going to take these 2D particles and I'm going to just throw it on there. Once again, I'm going to use the same trick we've seen before. I'm going to go to Title Matte and say Apply to Title Matte. This is a particle system. It's going to blow up this could be an Avid title. This can blow up a logo. This can essentially make anything into particles. It's automated to go forward for you. I want you to see that there's a gorgeous preset, and so you understand the preset I'm going to choose is I'm going to do a title, a wipe. I just want you to see how it works. Let's just do the title wipe. And as we roll this through, you can see it's wiping off the right side until all the particles fall down. We're going to build it manually. Again, we're not going to need any keyframing. I'm going to come up here and say reset the defaults, turn on my title matte. Let's look down. You can see it's scattering. I'd like it to wipe, so I'm going to go down to where it says scatter wipe. I'm going to park inside of the effect partially. I want to make sure we're seeing some of it scattered. One of the things I find really funny when I teach is I watch people position on the first frame, say, of an edge wipe, and they don't see the edge because they're not looking at the middle of the effect. You always want to make sure your playhead is at a spot where you can see the results of the effect. I'm going to go to scatter wipe and open that up, and I'm just going to turn it on. Let's see what that did. Well, it's wiping through this from right to left. That's gorgeous. It's a little slow. Take a look where it says up here, animate forward. I can say animate it fast forward, and it will finish faster. I can have it have more particles, let's say 1,000 particles, and it becomes a really fine snow. And you see where I'm going, don't you? I'm going to have this wipe and scatter like snow does. You know, I want it to be from the left, not from the right. So again, I'm looking at that scatter wipe, and you can see my angle is at 90 degrees. Let's see, if that's 90, that must be 0 at the top. That's 180 at the bottom, 270 on the left. So I'm just going to go in here to the wipe angle, and I'm just going to start cranking it over until it's at 270. And we'll make it 270 manually, type it in. That's good. And the only other thing I'm missing is I want it to fall, and that requires something that's an interaction with the world. And look, there's the word gravity. I'm just going to crank up the gravity and watch the particles fall to the ground. And so now this logo, I have it coming off as if it was somebody blowing away snow. So there we've got the logo. I'm going to do one more of these, and then we'll do a little bit of film looks, and we're done. And I'll be turning it back to Jessie so she can do the giveaway. I'm going to go ahead now and take a look at this last. Again, there's my email, Jeff at J Greenberg Consulting. I teach Media Composer. I teach Premiere Pro. I teach Final Cut 7 and 10. I'm a master trainer. I actually teach other trainers how to teach. The cool part about all that is, of course, you can have me teach for you if you have a question. My goal is to answer questions because, you know, email is free, phone calls cost money. I want to do just a nice little sweep, a nice little ray blast here with my information. I'm going to go to the FEC Effects, and I'm going to take a look here down at light. There's some gorgeous things you can do, like a sweep. You can do a light sweep through text. I'm going to do a light blast or light rays. Let's do light rays. I'm going to take a light rays here, and I'm going to say, all right, no, let's do light blast. Let's see them both. I'm going to throw on light blast. Yeah, that's the one I'm going to want. I'm going to say here, go ahead and title matte, apply to title matte. We've got a light source here, and all I got to do is grab it and move it around. And as I move around that light source, you'll see it's changing how it affects this. I could double click and just say, let's see what a light rays looks like. You can see a light behind it, and it's going to affect my text. I'm actually going to undo. Let's stick with the light ray, the light blast. Let's keyframe it. It's the only time in this entire presentation I'm going to do an animation with keyframes. I'm lying, of course. I did the little fade down. But look, here I am. I'm just going to move off to the left somewhere here. I'm going to hit my keyframe button on Media Composer. I'm going to move later in time. Hit my keyframe button, move somewhere else. And what we now have is we have this moving through. Oh, I must not have gotten the first one. Let me go to the first frame. Make sure I have that keyframe selected. Ooh, you're not selecting my keyframe for me. There you go. There you go. Select my keyframe. Let's move that back. There we go. And as I scrub through now, oh, you are not moving through. Give me one more shot at it. Select my keyframe. Should have. I'm on the light blast. Okay. Well, you know, in any demo, it's always healthy to have something not work. I'll try it one more time. You're going to start there. I want you to end here. Go to the next keyframe. I'm clearly doing something wrong. It's something small, I'm sure. Don't hold it against me. I'm going to give it one more shot. Let's do that. Let's give it one more try just for giggles. So I'm going to replace this with the original one. I'm going to go ahead here to Logos and Titles. There's my title. It's in a nice little pop-up screen. You can't see it. There it is. I'm going to put my playhead on top. Right there. Let's get that title again. I'm going to use the infamous replace edit. Pow, it's been replaced with the original on the wrong track, of course. Right track. Patch. Put the original in. Let's go ahead. Let's get back into effect mode. Let's throw our light blast on it. No option key again. Jump into effect mode. Let's turn on our apply to title matte. Go to our first frame, add our keyframe, move it to the left, move later in time, add our keyframe, move it to the right, scrub through, feel like it's a universe that does still care a little bit after me because it is working. We get these gorgeous light blasts going on, and now I just want to finish this entire piece. Let's scroll out so we can see our entire timeline. I want to add a nice film look to it because I'd like these shots to pop. I'm going to go back to the BCC categories. There are these gorgeous film styles. I promise you we'd look at a film process. I'm just going to drag that onto a higher track, onto V4. And when I do that, nothing happens beyond getting the filter effect on it. And nothing happens right out of the gate because it's not doing anything. It's not been set at all. There are a bunch of film things here like pre-process and lens misting and film tinting, but I'm just going to stick with the presets for this. So I have things that like color reversal. I actually worked with film as a film student. I used color reversal, and it's got that nice hard color to it and a harder contrast. I could try something a little bit more traditional if you wanted to see a bleach bypass. Let's look at that just a little later in the timeline, like with one of our snowboarders. We can see that guy there. You know, it's nice to be able to compare this. Again, working down the effect, you can see there's a compare switch. I'm just going to turn it on. Do a side-by-side comparison so you can see a before and after. Let's try another one of these. Let's say we were going to shoot this at twilight, the end of the day. We can now see the one on the right. It's a little, you can see though that orange sun, it's a little too strong. There was one right before it called Twilight Time Reduced. Yeah, I would almost buy that's end of day. I'm going to turn off that compare. I'm going to end up here with a really nice, let's do a color push. So the colors are just a little bit harder and a little bit pushed. That's great. I've colorized the entire sequence, the entire section here. It's got a little bit of extra color push, that nice blue that we associate with being cold. The one last thing I just want to point out, and then I'm going to turn it back to Jesse, is just this idea here, under the color and tone. There's some really nice effects here. There's a set of videoscopes, which we're going to add. One of my favorites is one called Correct Selected, which allows you to essentially replace one color with another. Again, it's in another Boris webinar if you want to see that. But I want to look at these video scopes. I'm going to just drag and drop this up to V5. Here are a set of scopes. They're a little bit more accurate than the ones built into Media Composer's color corrector. The Media Composer color corrector ones, they're not bad, but they don't show the entire raster. These do. There are a bunch of presets here. For example, the one that I live off of happens to be the RGB Parade. I'm going to go for the extra large version of that. And we just have a nice giant RGB parade where I can see, oh, there's some extra blue in this, and I can see blue is higher than red and green in the midtones of snow, which should all be white. It's great to have another utility effect that's a little bit more accurate than Avid scopes are. It's a lot more accurate than Avid scopes in that regard. And they've got a whole bunch of variations on it, so you can have multiple scopes open as you need it. I usually leave this up on a higher track. And something that I just was pointed out to me this week, I've been using this for years and just never knew it. Under the broadcast safe, there's this really cool ability to log when you run into errors based on the thresholds. It's something definitely worth exploring. So there we go. We're taking a look at here. I, of course, want to thank Artbeats. I want to thank Boris. And I want to thank Jesse, who's going to come back here in a second. I just find that these effects are my bread and butter effects that I have to have on a Media Composer to make it do everything as well as it can. So my effects system is as capable as my editorial system.